Hi, Lauren.
What's up?
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Never been better. Unfortunately, here right now it is I normally do the podcast like outside in the yard of my house whenever I'm Skyping or having people over, but it is disgustingly windy and dusty outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you live in a desert. So,
Right. I was gonna say
yeah.
that's kind of how it was when I was in Texas. So,
Yeah, no, it's horrible. That's why I hate spring this time of year because I know winds are picking up and that means dust storms. Can't really be outside and it's just not ugly to look at. It's like brown and gray outside. So it's
yeah.
all right. Well,
Oh,
one thing that I like to do that that I kind of surprise people with is I try to find someone's celebrity like or character from a show or whatever, and I try to find like their twin.
okay.
And I can't, and honestly, no one comes to mind. Well, there was a little bit. You kind of have like the smile and kind of like the features of like Ava Mendes. Like you know who Ava Mendes is?
I actually don't.
Well, she's in a lot of movies. Like she's in I don't know if you've seen The Other Guys with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell.
That sounds like something I would have watched, but I can't remember.
Yeah, well she plays how do I share my there we go. She plays Will Ferrell's wife, and
Oh,
she's
yes. Yes.
yeah,
Now I know
yeah,
what you're talking about. Yeah, because
yeah,
she's like
like
crazy pretty and he's
yeah,
like
she's crazily
so
pretty.
awkward.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, you man,
He's like
that's
so
that's like
mean to
your
her.
yeah,
That's the only reason I remember is because he's so mean to her. And Mark's like
yeah,
the whole time was like, dude, what the
yeah." Mark Wahlberg's like, she's like a, you know, and then she's like, "Oh, you should see her when she actually like dresses up." But
just
no,
remember being so scandalized that whole movie because every time we talked to her, I was like, "What is your problem?" Like, oh my
yeah,
gosh.
but like for some reason I was like scrolling through and I'm like I can't find one for her. And then for some reason I looked at Ava Mendes and I'm like she had like kind of blue or green or purple hair. It's like maybe like I don't see it.
Oh, that's funny. Who's
Yeah,
your celebrity look-alike?
that's the thing. If anyone can find it, by all means, send it to me.
You're just gonna have to become famous and you'll be your own.
Yeah, exactly. It's like who's Christian's celebrity twin? Myself.
Oh, good deal.
Yep. All right. So obviously, first off, thank you for being here. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. You're one of the very few people, obviously, from a lot of people who do listen know about my first year, but you're one of the very few people who, one, I knew because you were one of my good friends, his team leader during the net years, and also you just had a very like poignant, very straightforward personality, which I love because that means no nonsense, no garbage going on. It's just this is what you need to hear, and this is what needs to happen.
Yes.
And also your story is also one of those things where I'm like where like you understood what it means to have a great team of missionaries, but also have a very bad one to the point of you didn't even want to return for one of your years. And so basically I want to get like your perspective about obviously to Catholicism and Christianity in that, and then obviously what you're doing right now, and of course, kind of, I don't know, maybe we'll jump all around a little bit scenario. But let's start off with you. So, where are you from, and what do you do, and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so I am from a little town called Fraser, Michigan. I can't remember if your team did come, I think, to my house
No, we did, yeah,
for
yeah, we
like
were at your
Easter,
mom's house.
actually, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
and
yeah. So around this time, like what, four years ago?
no, it was now almost 5 years. No,
Oh,
5 years. No,
oh
four
my
years ago.
gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
4 years
Either way,
ago.
that's a small child.
That is a long time. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I am from Fraser, Michigan, which is a small town, and born and raised there. And um, what was your other? I already forgot because I have ADD. So
No, you're good.
where I'm from
Okay.
and then what I do now and how I started.
No, well, pretty much like, were you born and raised Catholic? Were you always like a Christian, have Christian beliefs, or like how did you become to be a follower of Christ in a sense?
Okay. Yeah, so I was born and raised Catholic. My parents had what I guess we would consider a reversion. So they were Catholic their whole lives, but didn't really have that encounter, didn't really have that spiritual life that they, most Catholics, I think, aspire to. They didn't have that until their later years. And so I always like appreciate that about them, but I also wonder sometimes like what it would have been like to have parents that didn't believe, because I think a lot of ministry you see that consistently is you have a lot of teens that believe but parents that don't believe.
Hmm.
And so they raised me and my younger sibling very, very Catholic. Like we had the being the youngest of the six of us kids, we had the like ultra Catholicism upbringing. So like we went to daily mass, Eucharistic adoration, like the rosary, Lectio Divina, like anything that's super hyper Catholic, is how we were raised. And that was just literally the norm. Like every day, like priests would come over for dinner. My mom was a secretary for a priest. Like all sorts of like just very Catholic things that I always took for granted. Like I thought it was normal to have a
Hmm.
godfather who was a priest. I thought it was normal to, have priests over once a week for dinner and play soccer with them. And we were raised almost as if me and my younger brother, as if these priests and seminarians and nuns were our aunts and uncles. Like that's how close of a relationship we had, which is very unique. I didn't realize until later in life. So from a young age, I understood like Christianity and the morals and values and the great communal aspect of it. But it was about in middle school when I really pushed back against the faith. It was an experience of bullying, and it was, kind of that built up consistently being bullied that I was like, wait a second. If God's real and he's so good, like why would he create such awful people? And it just
Of
led down this
course.
path of like, this just doesn't add up. And so in a typical rebellious teen fashion, I just didn't want to go to church, didn't really believe in God, pushed away from my faith, became very isolated and secluded, didn't really have many friends. And I just refer to those as the dark lost years because I don't really remember those times.
It's the
Um,
dark ages of your childhood.
exactly. And then it wasn't until I was 16, and I was in a car accident and I almost died that I was like, oh, dang, like if things are like I could have died if this is real, if God's real, then
Wait, you were in a car accident? Well, how did that
yeah.
happen?
So I was 16 and we were taking a left-hand turn. And the last thing I remember is my mom screaming my dad's name. And I look out my window and the last thing I see is a headlight. And I just, nothing after that. And when I came to, my hands were just in glass. And I'm just sitting there like, what just happened? And the van is on its side. And I look over, my mom's like suspended in the air. They had to like cut her out. And just like crazy, crazy stuff. So that's what really was the turning point, was like I could have and should have died, but for some reason didn't. And so that became the turning point of, okay, if this God guy is real, like I need to get to know him, because like at that point I was very worried about like if I died, would I go to heaven if heaven is real? And that's what led me down my like current version of Lauren path, was
Yeah.
built on the 16-year-old version of me. So
That's a very like not I don't want to say like a graphic image, but that's like one of those things where life flashes before your eyes of waking up and just literally having glass on your hands and seeing your parents like literally dangling from the car, obviously being obviously the car flipped, but and first off, for even you to survive that, I mean, that just goes to show like there's obviously there's a reason, and two, just how incredibly lucky you are too.
yeah, for
Like,
sure. And like I think that led to a lot of questions
hmm.
that I couldn't answer, and I had to find someone who could answer. My mom, obviously, like you've met her, in both. I think you met my whole family at this point.
Yeah, no,
They
she's a
all are,
very wonderful woman. I love her to death.
yeah, they're like very devout. And I think that, like I think we meet God in different ways. I think some people have big encounters with him. I think there's some people that, praise God, never have to experience depression or anxiety or anything traumatic in their life. And they have this slow, gradual love for God. that they encounter him over the years in a very special way. And so I think God just knows us so well. Obviously, he created us, but I think he knows us so well that he knows how we need to meet him. And for me, it was that big bang, like, we mean business.
Yeah,
um, so
definitely.
I appreciate that about God, that he reached out at the time that he did. I used to, in early, conversion stages in the first few years after like coming back to the faith in its fullness, I used to really think like, why didn't God do this sooner? Like, why didn't he save me from all of that and the depression and anxiety and everything that I was feeling? But I think I really did need to go through it and experience it to be where I am today, in ministry and just life in general, like to be able to just relate with people who have high anxiety or depression or stresses and, trauma in their life that they're healing from.
Well, it's one of those things also that especially in teenagers nowadays, they ask the same question. If God does exist, then why does he allow bullying? Why do people, have to suffer? Why are my parents suffering? Why wasn't I born? Why isn't everyone born with like money in their pockets so they don't have to starve?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, though the thing I have to say, okay, we'll take God out of the equation. What makes great people great? It's not being given everything. It's working hard, having hardships, overcoming hardships, and honestly, not just the most important thing is belief, whether it's another higher power or just belief in yourself and believing what you can do and asking those questions. And that's just something I think people don't understand is like people wouldn't be as great as they were had they not had to suffer. I mean, look at
Mm-hmm.
people in the past, like, we can go through the saints, like Saint Peter wouldn't be Saint Peter had he not have denied Christ 3 times,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go on, like the Virgin Mary, she wouldn't be the Virgin Mary had she would literally been told by an angel that as a 12 or 13-year-old being told, hey, you're going to give birth. It's not going to make any sense, but you're going to do it. Do you say
Right.
yes? And of course, Christ himself. Christ was ridiculed and Christ was booted out of temples and synagogues for saying what he was saying. And of course, he even got killed for what he was doing. Like it wasn't easy. Like all the great people, even the people that no one knows about, had to deal with hardships and had to deal with those questions of, okay, what am I meant for? Why wasn't this done earlier? Is for us to grow, those painful growing pains, and what makes us who we are, and we continue we'll still to have those encounters, whether big or small, even to this day, to the end of days, actually.
Right.
So, are you currently still living in Michigan, or are you somewhere else?
So I moved back to Michigan. Yeah. So when we met, I think I had just moved to Cincinnati a couple months before.
Mm.
And then I moved back to Michigan. I think like I saw your team off and then I was done with net and moved back to Michigan.
Yeah, I remember that. That obviously for those who are going to tune in and don't know what we're talking about. My first year I served on the national evangelization team, year 16, 17 in the Cincinnati regional. We were just a very dysfunctional group. There's just no easy way to put it. But I mean, the way that it was structured, Cincinnati, like obviously with the archdiocese and the archbishop, and the way Mark Holcraft, yourself, and I can't remember who else was there, but those are the only 2 people or 3 people I remember. And obviously, you saw it firsthand. You saw the stress levels going up and down and all the craziness. But yeah, no, I remember to this day we were at some, I don't know where we were, but you called us all together, pretty much like, yeah, I've had to pray hard, and it's very difficult for me, but I'm leaving. It's like, okay, leaving, like you're leaving, walking out the door. Okay, bye, Lauren. Or it's like, no, I'm like leaving there. It's like, oh, it's like, hmm. And obviously, it was one of those things I wanted to know why, but at the same time, I knew it was none of my business. Yeah, because it's like, it's your life, your decisions, you're an adult, you do what you want. You're ultimately not given them fully control, but you have most of the control of the decision making in you. But if you want to, like, could you elaborate like why you ended up only serving as a, I mean, what as a coordinator, right? Would that
Yeah,
be accurate
yeah,
as a coordinator? Like,
yep.
why did you only serve that 1 year?
So I actually was supposed to be on mission staff that year.
Hmm.
And it was literally right before I left. I want to say like maybe 4 days, maybe a week at most, that I got a call from the national office asking if I, instead of going to mission staff, if I would take a full-time paid position on the Cincinnati staff. And I think the reasoning was I was very familiar with the Cincinnati staff, so I served as the team leader for 2 years. The first year as the Cincinnati like regional team officially wasn't until my second year. The first year was like a pilot, almost like tester, can we do good? So that's why it was team 6, I think, originally, and then it changed to team 3, and now it's always team 3, which is kind of cool, to have that like legacy of like, oh, that's, I always pray for team 3 and team 6. So it was, I had just grown a lot in those 2 years of working in that Cincinnati region, because it wasn't just Cincinnati. It was, especially in the first 2 years, it was a little bit of everywhere, like wherever they needed us, we went. And so we did get a little bit of travel that first year, and the second year was less travel. But it was just a really positive experience, working as a missionary. Like, I know my first year team, I did have a lot of struggles with, and there was a lot of growing pains, which is ultimately, like, I think what you kind of referred to at the beginning, like it was a hard for me. Like, it wasn't, I don't think there's a dysfunctional team as much as like we're wounded people trying to do God's will, and there's always going to be adversity. Like, the devil hates us as humans in general, so like there's always going to be bumps in the road, no matter what kind of people work together. And so that was really challenging my first year, and it wasn't until like halfway through my first year that I was like, dang, like this is like a life altering experience. Like, and it's, what I'm putting in is what I'm going to get out. And so which is ultimately what led me to do my second year. And my second year, I'm so glad I went back, because it was just so amazing. Like, I had grown so much, and the people that God had placed in my life both years were truly transforming in my faith journey. So anyway, so that led me to being like, see ya. After 2 years, I was like, that was my commitment, because prior to coming on that, I owned my own business. I did professional event makeup. And so I had left my business to go on that. And I knew my first year, if I leave my business and put it down, then it's going to take me at least 2 years. Like, I'm not going to just put it down for 9 months and then pick it back up. Like, it just didn't seem logical to me. And so I knew when I left my cosmetic industry job, like I wasn't going to come back for at least a couple of years. So when I came back after my second year, I thought I was truly done with net. So I actually did go back into the cosmetic industry for like 6 months, and then realized that nothing had changed, that everyone was still pretty vapid and pretty assured, and at the same time very self-aware and self-conscious, and like very broken and wounded. And that just didn't sit well with me. And so after 6 months of being back in the industry, I ended up going back to net. And it was, I think it was like a team was super sick in Chicago. And so for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I just took off work and I went and I was with that team. And that team was the team that was like, you should do mission staff. And I was like, no, I'm done with that. Like, that was cute. I just wanted to help.
They're
Um,
they're
so
peer pressurers. That's what they do.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but then I prayed about it and called Dave Rinaldi, and I think it was Dave Rinaldi. I can't remember if it was Dan Driver or Dave Rinaldi, and whoever it was, they were like, oh yeah, definitely apply. And I ended up getting it. And then all of that led me to being in the Cincinnati office on staff. And it was a very different environment, because you go from one expectation of something, which I had my expectation of net in a team environment, to a
Yeah.
professional setting with no team, no family, no really support system, living alone. Like, I'd lived with a couple families briefly, and then end up living alone in a studio apartment. And it was just a huge change. Like, I didn't have nearly enough time off, like not enough time off, but like it was a very taxing job, emotionally, mentally, and physically, even at times. And like, from doing that, part of that is expected, but like I was like working with your team a lot at different high energy, big events in different, parts of the state. And so I was traveling a lot on the weekends and not getting like a lot of not a lot, but I wasn't getting days off. And so that was very draining. So I wasn't able to go home to Michigan very often. So it all just kind of compiled. And I think ultimately, I remember being in adoration one day and praying, like, Lord, you have to open a door. And I just meant within the environment I was planted, like within this office, open doors. And he started just flinging every orifice open, like windows, doors, breaking down brick walls. And it just, without a doubt, was it's time to leave. And so I was very reluctant to leave, but ultimately, to see a lot of graces in the time that I left was very much God sent. So that was really hard though, like especially with your team. And I think I told them I wouldn't leave until your team was officially done in the archdiocese because I didn't want to be away from your team because I feel like we had gone through so much together that I was like, I can't. I remember calling my family and crying, like I can't leave them. So that was like
I
very
would not
important
have
to me.
blamed you if you
Yeah.
had left. I was like, yep, I don't blame her. Don't blame her one bit.
No, I to this day I still love your team and pray for them. And I don't know how many of them are super active on social media. I think only like two or three of you are very active on
Uh,
social media. But
I'm barely active on social, so
yeah,
I'm one of them. Uh, JJ kind of, not anymore, but yeah, really nobody else is very active on social. Well, Abby is
yes, Abby is.
very, yeah, she's very active on social media. I'd like to
Yeah,
have her on here. That's if she accepts the invitation.
yeah, that'd be
But
awesome.
it would. Honestly would like to have her and like to really get to talk to her and really just just hear what she's got to say because everyone's got something to say.
Yeah,
And but ultimately it's up to her. And if she don't want to do it and nothing to do with me, then oh well, I can't force her.
right.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean I mean I don't. First off, I don't hate anybody. Hate is a strong word, but there are some people though that I would not make an effort to like reach out and be like, hey, let's go grab a beer or something. Because I'm more normally the norm is like, oh, let's go grab coffee, but I don't drink coffee, so yeah, I don't drink coffee. But no, there's only like a handful of them where I think about and like I still have in my heart and in my thoughts, but no, there's just some that I don't lose sleep at night knowing I'll probably never see them again, if that makes sense. Which is
Yeah.
okay, which is okay.
And to be
If
fair, I think that's like any area of your life. Like I don't think it's just I think um especially netters can attest to like net is this own separate weird unit of the world.
yeah,
And I think we take things maybe a little bit more seriously or sensitively or however it goes. But I think there's a lot of grace to be said in just like, letting go. Like we did this incredible thing together. And that was the time in my life that God planted you in my life. And I don't think there should be any, that's what I always have a hard time with is like when people get hurt that I don't stay in contact or when they get hurt that I'm not like actively in communication with them. I'm like, like it's nothing personal. Like
yeah,
I think God plants me in different areas for different reasons. And even back in Michigan, like this is my second job since moving back to Michigan. And it was hard, like transferring from one parish to another, because you build that bond with a community and then you have to leave it. But that's the thing is like you have to leave,
yeah.
So that's even biblical. Like when we leave one town, dust your shoes off and don't look back. Like we're supposed to continually move on. So I appreciate that about like you just being very frank about it. Like, like you can't lose sleep if people are in that mindset. So
No, exactly. And that's how, well, like I kind of like in a similar way to yours. Like first year was not great, but then second year, that's what made it well worth it. When it's obviously my current girlfriend right now, honestly, she served on my second year team. Never would have met her
oh,
in my life had I not have
I did
done it.
not know that.
Yeah, she
Oh my
she served
gosh.
with me. And but
No
here's
way. When did you guys start dating?
we started dating let's see, Valentine's Day of 2020 is when we started dating.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, so here's the funny story. I don't know how, whatever. She's told me the story, but so he basically we were put on a team on the road, and at first she hated me. She did not like me at first, just cause when everyone is doing their sessions at the Camp Wapagasa in Wisconsin, and they talk about, okay, like what are some examples, and I said a lot of examples of why I'm like, yeah, there's things that happen here that you all need to be told about, and a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, because people need
You're
to know the truth.
scandalizing them.
Yeah, I'm letting you know, like, hey, if people were telling you this is sunshines and rainbows, they're lying.
You're a little bit jaded, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. And so she was like, "Oh, I hope I don't have him on my team."
Oh,
That's what she told me. And then when we were put on teams, and I had no idea. But then, of course, the one thing that I appreciate with people is if you actually get to know me and you actually get to know how I work and my methods to my madness, then I see that, and I appreciate that human being, that individual a lot more, because it's like, damn, you actually do care about me. You really
hmm.
do. All right, I see that. Okay. And so we started just talking, hanging out, like because she was very quiet. So I take a curiosity in quiet people, because I'm like, okay, I want to see what you're like. Like, I want to see what are your motives are. And also, I love to see quiet people get angry. I
Oh,
love to
she.
see them get angry. It's just, I want to see, it's like, what happens when you pop. And
Oh my
so we fast forward, and we start to become really good friends, and we became very, very comfortable with each other. And then, of course, the year's over, bye, see you later. I don't know if we'll see each other again, but it was fun. Like, that's it. And then of course, I kept in contact a little bit, like I text here and there, maybe a call, and then that was it. And then I was working as a bartender. I was bartending, and I met some really great people at that bartending job. I still am with them to this day. I owe them a lot, and they started to hit me up with dates, like, how long have you been single? I'm like, I've been single for like now 4 years. Like, well,
gosh.
well, we need to find you a girlfriend. So I'm like, all right. So I take them. So they hook me up with dates with friends of theirs, and basically I take them out. I take them out to cool places. Like, I remember I took a girl to this arcade slash bar here in El Paso. Like, it was like, oh, we'll play some video games. We'll play pinball or shoot some pool. Do that stuff. And I asked her, like, hey, is that cool? And she's like, yeah, it's okay. And she hated it. She was like,
Oh,
it was kind of boring. I'm like, boring? It's like, all right, I guess. Yeah, I took her home and didn't call her back. and then
oh,
and then the same thing happened two more times. But here's the kicker. For some reason, it just seeped in my head of like, dang, who would have really liked that? And then boom, she'd pop into my head, and it was like,
oh,
what the hell? Okay, that's weird. And then it happened again and again and again. So I'm like, oh God, I think I'm in love with her.
oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, so I basically was like, okay, how do I tell her? Because obviously we don't. I live in Texas. She lives in California. That's like 17 hours away, because she lives in Northern California. So it's like,
Okay.
how can I tell her? I can't just like call her and be like, oh, hey, I like you. Call me back when what you think. That's weird, and that's awkward, and it's like puts a lot of pressure on them. So it's
Right.
like, okay, that's out. And then it's like voicemail, that's almost as bad, if not worse. Just like, oh, hey, I like you. Give me a call back. That's not a good idea. And then, of course, the other option was just the worst option, which is text message. And my thing with texting is like, I know what it's like to get dumped over text message. I don't think it's a good idea to tell someone you like them over text message.
Right.
So I'm all out of options. I'm all out of options. And so I call a teammate of mine, who lives in Chicago, and he served on my second year with me. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do, man. And he's like, well, you should try writing her a letter. I'm like a letter? And he's like, well, yeah, like a letter. I'm like, dude, that's not my style, dude. I don't write letters. Lord knows I have trouble like even writing a sentence. Like, I can't write a letter. He's like, well, the way you're speaking to me, if you're saying letters aren't in your style, well, struggling to tell a girl you like her isn't your style either. And I'm like, wow, you jackass. Way to rub it in. So I did. Um, I just wrote what was in my heart, and of course I was like, when's a good day to send it? And it just so happened Valentine's Day was the following week.
Oh
So I was
my
like, okay,
gosh.
I'll send it for Valentine's, whatever. And I just started like kind of texting her again, trying to, like not make it weird, just like randomly you don't hear from me, and then it's like, hey, I like you. Here's a letter. So I was kind of, so I was kind of like I was messaging her, kind of like asking what she's been doing. She got a new job and all this stuff. And then I told her like, hey, by the way, I sent you a little friendship gift in the mail. Let me know when you get it. And she's like, oh, okay. And I was tracking it with the postal service, and it was gonna get there on Valentine's Day. So I was like, all right, cool, all right, we'll find out on Valentine's Day. So I'm freaking out, I'm nervous, and it is Valentine's Day. And then I text her, hey, did you get the gift? She's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? And I'm thinking, oh God, it got lost, or they lost it or something. And she's like, oh no, I'm not at the house. Me and my family are at Disneyland. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I gotta wait longer. So I'm like, oh, so I'm sweating. I'm sweating so hard. I'm freaking out. One of my good friends, her name's Chelsea. She actually was in cosmetics and makeup. She's very
Oh,
good. Yeah, very, very good.
nice.
I'll send her a link, or actually I'll pull up her social media page in a little bit. But I told her like, what do I do? She's like, Chris, you need to relax. You need to relax, okay? If God wants this to happen, then it's gonna happen. Understand?
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, Chelsea, you got it. She's like, this is why I'm the adult of all you bartenders. Yeah. So then she texts me, okay, we're home, and I'm like, oh God, okay. And so I say
So
a
was
quick
this
prayer.
later on Valentine's Day that she got back
No,
home?
it's like a couple days
Oh,
later after Valentine's Day. So it was like
oh
great.
my
And in
gosh.
the letter I wrote Happy Valentine's Day. So I'm like, okay, we'll just see what happens. And she gets home and she texts me, okay, I'm home. I was like, all right, let me know what you think of the gift. And I get home and I just gotten my income tax money. This is pre-COVID in the pandemic, and I had a lot of weddings to go to in the summer of 2020. Like I had my uncle was recently going to get married. One of my teammates who got married, obviously Colby Button and
Oh
Sarah Ashley.
yeah.
Yeah, I was excited to go to theirs. Then Joe Rinda was getting married,
Yes.
and
Gosh, your
then
whole team.
yeah,
Like,
and then Allison was getting married.
oh my
Allison got married.
gosh.
So I was like, four weddings, all right, and I got like a lot of money back. So I was going home with the intention of buying all these plane tickets. And then all of a sudden she texts me and she's like, "Hey, I got your letter." And I was like, "Okay." And so I texted back, "Okay, question mark, question mark." And it's because I'm like, "Okay, what do you think?" I'm like thinking like, "God, oh my God, she hates it." I'm like, "She hates it. She hates it. She's gonna hate me. She's gonna tell everybody." And then she's like, and then of course, thankfully, she was like, "Oh, it was so beautiful. I loved it. Let me call you."
Oh.
And basically, she was like tears were like tears. You can hear tears and all that. And I'm like, oh, she's like, do you really feel this way? I'm like, well, actually, yeah. Like, she's like, have you always felt this way? I'm like, okay, well, what does always mean? Well, like since we were on a team, and I said, okay, do you want me to be honest? She's like, yeah. Okay, no. It's like, no, I did it. And it's not just to say like, you weren't beautiful and you weren't pretty and I didn't love your personality and how we could work. It's just one, while I'm on net, I was there strictly for business. I'm here
Right.
for the youth and also to take care of you all the way that some of my first year teammates didn't take care of me. Like that was my job and that was my goal and what I wanted to do. Like it was strictly business. And plus the likelihood of me being with one of my teammates is like 0 to 1. Like it's like not gonna happen. Well, of course I say that now, but that was my mind process and my thought. And so she's like, okay, fair enough. Well, what made you think this way? I was like, and I told her the whole dating story and how she just popped in my head. And then she was like, okay, well, I need to tell you something. I'm like, all right. I've always found you attractive. And I'm like,
Ah,
really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And she's like, yeah, like you've never noticed? I'm like, no, not once. And there's this thing that I've been saying about on the podcast is guys have two brains. We have our regular human brains, and then we have what I call monkey brain, which
okay.
is dumb, which is just the dumb things. We can't pick up any signs. We do some really dumb things. Basically, we become like animals. That's what I call it. And yeah, I was like, yeah, I had a case of, well, if you made it obvious, I guess I had a case of monkey brain and I wasn't picking up the signs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, then she told me like, yeah, it was hard. Like the girls had to sometimes hold me back from speaking to you. And I'm like, really? I never picked up on it.
That is so funny.
Yeah, but and then she, of course she asked me, okay, how would it work? And I said basically like, look, nothing was ever handed to me in life. I had to scratch and claw to get the things that I wanted or just the things that I needed to do. Like
Mhm.
nothing ever came easy to me and I'm used to that. I am willing to wait and I'm willing to see how this works, you know, and see where this goes rather than just like, you know what, it's long distance, it's hard, let's not give it a try at all. Like, no, I'm willing to wait and have to sacrifice a few months of not seeing each other rather than not give this a shot at all if you're willing to do the same.
Mhm.
So she said, yes, I am. Let's see how this goes. And yeah, now we've been dating for a year and a month now.
Yay!
Yeah, yeah, so
I
that's
love it.
yeah, that's our story right there.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't know she was on your net team. You might have told me that, and I might have just forgotten.
Yeah, that's all good. No, hardly anybody knows she was. Well, obviously the people on my team they know, but other netters that like when they found out about it, they're like, oh, was she on net? Like, what team was she on? She was on my team. Oh, really? And of course the typical, were you always attracted to her? And I'm like,
Right.
oh, no. Uh,
Oh, that is funny.
Yeah, just a funny story, just the way obviously it all went down and how it came to fruition. And also the fact that she did not like me at first
Right.
and and and, and then of course like, then to find out it's like, yeah, I never liked you, but I never had no idea that you liked me. So,
Oh my gosh.
what enough about me and my love life. You're also in almost in a knot, aren't you?
I'm almost a what?
You're almost in a knot. Like you almost tied.
Yes. Yeah. I waited forever and I finally found a dude to marry. No, I'm kidding.
Like
The problem is
finally, it's
it just
about time.
yeah, I know. I'm very, very picky, but yeah. So it's funny. My boyfriend and I, our first date was on Valentine's Day, and I always envisioned guys like hating Valentine's Day, because the only other guy I ever was in a relationship with on Valentine's Day was my very first boyfriend when I was like 17, and he was like such a good guy in general that it was like
Okay.
not even comparable to like the average guy that I was dating. So I just assumed like most guys hated Valentine's Day. So he asked me out. We met like early February.
Where did you guys
And
meet?
what's that?
Where did you guys meet?
Online.
Don't be ashamed. Do not be ashamed. You say that proudly.
No, we met on Bumble, which it was funny because I had like stopped dating for like a while, a good time of like not dating. And I work like I'm, in ministry, and so I'm just like constantly like all my nights are typically filled, and so it was really hard to like just meet anybody like an organic relationship would naturally happen because I was always working. And so finally I decided like, okay, if God really wants me to get married, I also have to participate in that. And so I need to like be open to it. And so one of my good guy friends had told me, he's like, Lauren, you should try Bumble because it's like I think he was telling me like he thought it was safer, he thought it was easier for girls to use because like you don't have to like, a guy can't talk to you unless you like his profile or something. I forget how it works now, but
Okay.
essentially it was like the girls had more control over who talked to them.
Okay, it's
Uh,
not like where it's like Tinder where anybody can just randomly like DM you
right,
or like
exactly.
stalk
And
your
then
profile.
yeah, they only have like a limited time to be able to contact you. So I like he was like it's more serious. Like people typically will like actually want to date opposed to just like hook up.
Yeah.
Um so I was like, okay, that sounds, good. And I had gone on a few dates with a couple of other guys, and the biggest hurdle was like Christianity. Like no guy wanted to date a good Christian. And if it
Of
was
course not, because they know they ain't gonna put out.
exactly. And if it was the challenge factor of like, wait, so you're not going to sleep with me even if I like buy you a nice dinner or take, and I'm like, is that how it works? Like that's called prostitution. Like what are we doing here? So, like seriously, that's like, like it's an exchange of goods. Like what are you, like, what else you gonna call it? Like,
Yeah, that's
oh my
pretty much
gosh.
what it is. Hey, I buy you a nice dinner.
Right. Oh my gosh. So I was very bold and like, very intentional, obviously, with dating. And so when I had first started talking to him, I thought like, oh, I'll just go on a couple dates with him and then it'll be done because he was like, like barely Christian, like he believed in God but didn't go to church, like kind of thing. And I even like challenged it and was like, oh, would you go to church with me? Because that's how I kind of gauged like if they were serious potential or not. And he was like, maybe like once in a while, but I like he's a semi-pro fisher at the time, and so he was like, I like have a lot of fishing tournaments and everything. And
He's a
um,
semi-pro fisher.
yeah, when we first met, he was sponsored, and that was his last year of being sponsored. So he's not currently sponsored.
Oh, I love him already. I love fishing.
Well, if you come to Michigan, he will definitely take you out on his
Well,
boat.
well, definitely.
Um,
Now I can give Emily an excuse to go to Michigan. It's like, hey, we're going to Michigan. Why? Because I have a friend whose husband is a semi-pro fisher, and he'll make me go fishing. So, and
he's
she hates fishing.
he's already gonna love you because you referred to him as my husband. Like he's ready to marry me yesterday. So he'll just love that you like are already referring to him as that. Like he loves when my nieces and nephews will like call him Uncle Jeremy, and I'm like, no, it's Mr. Jeremy, and he'll be like, no, it's fine. Like let them call me Uncle Jeremy. But I'm like, no, it's not. It's anyway because I have like a crazy amount of nieces and nephews. So I'm like, no, we started with one, and then it's all gonna start. So, but anyway, so it was this long-winded like back and forth. Like we finally went out, and I do this like process, this vetting process. I don't let guys take me out for a date until I vet them, and then I'll give them the like go ahead of like, yeah, you can ask me out. So we go for like coffee or a walk or something. And then I'll just like let them know like, yeah, you can ask me out now.
Mm,
So we had met for coffee, and then I think it was like mid or like right before Valentine's Day, like maybe the 9th or 10th of February. And then he was like, what are you doing, the rest of the week? And I was like, oh, I have, ministry things. I'm working. I can't get away from work. And he was
mhm.
like, well, what about Valentine's Day? And I was like, I'm not working like that evening, but it's Valentine's Day. So like, no. He was like,
Yeah.
no, like I want to ask you out, like I actually want to go out with you. So I was like, all right, well, we'll see how it goes. And so he ended up like surprising me and coming to my work. And he had made me dinner a couple nights before. So it must have been like the 12th. And after that, I was like, okay, well, he's like obviously a nice guy. So we had our first date on Valentine's Day, and then we like talked. And the longer we talked, the more like open he became to kind of like, okay, I'm kind of interested about your faith and all that. And then it wasn't until I had my car literally broke down in the road, not on the side of the road, in the road.
Oh
Like
my
battery
God.
was dead, engine like nothing was on, and it was a semi-busy street. And I like called him because he has a big truck, and I was like, "Can you come and pull me out of the road? Like I'm like so scared right now." So he came and he pulled me out of the road. And then my dad shows up, and at this point, I was like gonna phase him out. Like I wasn't gonna really talk to him anymore.
Yeah.
And then my car broke down, and I was like, oh shoot, like I'm gonna have to stay in contact with this guy now because he's like bailing me out. So then my dad comes and he's like, oh Jeremy, like, and he had no idea that I was like dating him and all this. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. And then Jeremy was like super friendly and was like, oh, I'll bring her home, so you don't have to worry about coming back out and all that. And then on the way home, so this is like 8 hours later, I didn't leave work until 9 o'clock. So he picked me up at 9, and we're on our way. He's on our way to my house. And I was like, can we just stop at this church? Like, I just need to pray because I'm just like, I've had the worst day. And I know, again, he's not Catholic, not Christian, like, hadn't been to church in years. And he's like, there's no churches open at like 9:30 at night. And I was like, no, there's this church that's open. It was adoration. And so I told him, I was like, you can wait in your truck or you can come in with me. I don't care, but I just need to go in for like 15 minutes. And so he was like, well, okay, I'll come in with you. And I was like, and I think you like know me well enough. Like when I get like stressed, I'm just like very zoned into like one thing at a time, like just get
Yeah.
that one done and go to the next thing. And so that's what was happening. And so I was literally just like honed in on like, I just need time with Jesus. So he comes in with me and I'm like, just do what I do. And that's all I said to him. And so he like, genuflects and gets in there and he has this incredible encounter with Jesus, which I am totally irrelevant. Like I can't even like, not irrelevant. What's the word I'm looking for? Like just I'm not even aware of that this is all happening. And then we leave and he's like, is it always like that? And I'm like, yes. Like thinking like the altar was really pretty, there were candles, and I'm like, yeah, it's always like that. And he's like, oh my gosh, and he's like freaking out, like it was so amazing and I just felt so much peace. And so it wasn't until like I think a couple weeks later he ended up sharing like he had this like encounter with Jesus where he just felt like the weight of his like anxiety and worries and everything just lift off of him. And so he was like, Lauryn, I think I want to be Catholic. And I was thinking like
Oh.
he just wants to be Catholic because he really likes me and he can tell that I'm like phasing him out.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being not that way. And so he ended up coming into the church last Pentecost, so Pentecost 2020. So
Yeah.
coming into the church in a pandemic, which is crazy. But he ended up being an RCIA for like a year and a half, and just so like I look back at like when we first met, and I'll tell him this like probably at least once a month. I'm like, it's not even comparable, like to see who you are now and who you used to be. Like you're so not the same in so many aspects. So I'm just like super proud of him and like glad that it's not just me, that it's like, other people in his life have noticed it. And it's just really cool to see and be a part of someone's transformation, but not be like the reason for the transformation. Because I feel like in relationships, and I'm sure you've seen it in whether it's a friendship or romantic relationship, like people change to be with people that they really want to be with. And so it's
Yeah.
been cool to see like how Jesus captivated his heart and how that had led him into this like newfound lifestyle. And so it's been really, really awesome to see. And my younger brother is his confirmation sponsor, so that's been cool as well. But we've only been dating actually, so we didn't start dating when we met. Like we met, dated for like a month and a half, and stopped dating. And then he went through the Catholic, coming into the faith and everything, and then we didn't start dating until last August, August 2020. So we waited a bit to
Yeah.
date.
But I
So
mean, I think honestly waiting though is what the perfect timing of it. Because I think honestly if you just guys would have just started dating then and there, I think honestly you would have phased out.
mhm.
Because obviously you would have been like, oh, I don't think he's gonna change, and you know what, I think I do, and the faith that I have, and I need that faith, and but obviously, I think you unconsciously not giving him that chance, and when that opportunity came and allowing him to take the chance and take that opportunity of like, you know what, let me give it a try, I think is what ultimately made that spark of essentially of what his change, but also you noticing that change and knowing also that he's not doing it just so he can date me. He's doing this because he wants to just be a better person.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that in people nowadays they fail to realize. It's like, yeah, I agree. There are too many people, especially people my age, who I see they only change just because they're asking me to change. Okay,
Mhm.
that's nice, that's wonderful, but do you really want to change? Like, do you
Mhm.
actually want to put that commitment and that hard work of changing your ways to not only be whatever it is, be better at work, be a better husband, a better friend, a better father, a better, but a role model to your children, to your younger cousins or your younger brothers or whatever it is
Hmm.
like, because everybody wants people to change, like everybody does, but only God and people's wills have the will to change their problems and just things about them.
Hmm.
I mean, everything has a like God works in mysterious ways. Everything has an order, and
Right.
it's
Yep.
supposed to happen. But what's it called? I've like was like finding this. This is my friend in Chelsea. This is what I mean, like how crazy she is with makeup.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Does she still work in the cosmetic industry?
No, she's I met her. Oh, that's her baby boy.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, no, he's a bundle of fun. Yeah, that's her and her husband Sylvester. They're very good friends of mine.
Oh,
But no,
awesome.
she's currently at a bartender at the place that I was working at.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, honestly, like the first time I met her, it was like, dang, like that's like okay. Here's the thing that I have with the thing I am with makeup. I don't dislike makeup, but I don't like when women honestly rely too much on makeup. Like if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Because I'm one of those. It's like be confident in yourself. You don't need to put like obviously I understand why women do it. You look good, feel good. I get that, but if you rely too heavy on that, it's like let me see you without it. I want to see you without it.
Right.
Like
So, like,
please.
do you prefer more natural, like a more natural look in general? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, like for
Yeah.
example, Emily hardly wears makeup. She hardly
Yeah.
wears it, and I'm just one of those that's like, see, she looks gorgeous, and she doesn't need to wear makeup.
Right.
She doesn't need to wear makeup. And there's a bunch of women I see that I've seen them both with or without, and sometimes I tell them, you look even better without makeup.
Right.
Yeah,
Which I
which is
think I think that's like a positive thing to say because like working that was really hard. So like I was in the cosmetic industry for 6 years and I still like do like weddings and stuff now. But I think that was the hardest part and like the biggest desire to leave the cosmetic industry was because so many women, I just talked about this in a talk a couple weeks ago. I was so many women come and sit in the chair and like they'll sit down and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. Like kind of like what you're saying, like without their makeup. And they just would cry or like get really emotional of like, oh, I just hate this. And then describe different elements of their face or their bone structure or their lips or, like their eyes, how their eyes were set. And I'm like, I literally would not have thought of any of that. Like, and it was my job to pick out flaws. In the industry, you're told, like you have to pick out a client's flaws so that you can tell them what products they need, which there's a fairness to that. You do need to
yeah,
be honest. But I just was always like very affirming, even, yeah, like maybe they had an uneven skin tone or whatever, but like there's always so much beauty about like just raw beauty. And I think that as a generation, as a culture, we do such a poor job of like identifying that. Like we hide it and mask it. And a lot of it I personally think is because of like the porn industry. Like
oh,
men, I
most
think
definitely.
have a huge expectation for how women should look because from a young age they've seen these images and I think there's a lot of shame and stigma around it, but I think a huge portion of it is they have this false narrative in their head of how women are going to look.
Yeah,
And I think it's really sad because like I think with my boyfriend now, he's like seen me the most without makeup than anybody other than my family. Like I most of the time if I'm at home and I know he's coming over, like I'll wash my makeup off or what like and it's like so much freedom in that of like knowing like he is kind of like you, like you're so beautiful without makeup. And like I have a terrible uneven skin tone, and I notice all of my flaws. But like it's changed over the years where like I actually do feel beautiful, even without makeup on. And so I think part of it is a personal enlightenment and journey, but also I think it's a lot of women have been told their flaws from a young age, especially from other girls, and then even from boyfriends. Like I think the Lord, I've never had a boyfriend who's like told me, I hate this about you or whatever, but a lot of my friends have had their significant others like tell them like, oh, I wish you looked like this, or I wish you did this, or I wish you'd do your hair like this, or, and I even get upset when guys are like, I wish you would dye your hair like Lauryn. I'm like, no, like I do it because I enjoy it. Like it like brings out this artistic element in my personality. But like for no shape of any reason would say like every woman should dye their hair. Like I think my sisters, all of my sisters have natural hair and I just think they're gorgeous. Like, so it's like, for me, I think it's a more creative thing. Like, I just enjoy doing it. And same with makeup. Like, I enjoy putting makeup on in the process and like having that time in the morning. But I think so many girls, I mean, like even sixth and seventh and eighth graders now, like they're starting to become mini pros at makeup because they'll just watch YouTube
Yeah,
tutorials
YouTube
and
videos. It's
and
it's
master
so
it. And I'm like,
accessible now.
it's crazy. And there's I forget who the guys are, but there's like this group of guys who do videos on YouTube. And I was researching something for a talk and I came across this video and the guys would put up a picture of a girl and then guess her age. And 9 out of 10 times the girls were underage. And the guys who were like, and they're probably 19, 20-year-olds were like, are you kidding me? Like, and and just they were like, that's an eighth grader. Like I'm saying an eighth grader sexy. And they're like, this is why the world is messed up because like we don't know how old these girls are. And I got really upset because I was like, that's not why the world's messed up. The world's messed up because you're making these girls feel insignificant to the point that at eighth grade they master makeup so that they look
They
and
look
attract
like
a
an
different
adult.
right. They want your attention. Like that's what
Yeah.
the problem is
No,
we're
yeah.
creating these stigmas around beauty and masculinity and what relationships even look like. It's crazy.
No, it's a horrible thing of what's happening. Like obviously, I agree. A big part of why guys are basically are like that is because of the porn industry. We have this
Mhm.
warped perception of what, and it's not just about how women look. It's honestly how sex is too. Like that. It's first off, if you've ever watched it and you see some of the scenarios that happen, then like it is such crap. It is such garbage. Like
Yeah.
first off, that's never gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. That's not how the world works. But also a thing that I think is also a big problem with it. It is not just in the porn industry. Also, it's it's also. I mean, to me, it's people telling you you're not good enough and you have to be something more
Right.
and not be true to yourself. And I
Right.
think that's a generational thing where like obviously, there have been trends that have happened over, like, we'll take the 1900s from example. There's a big discrepancy and a big difference between how women dressed in the 1950s to obviously in the late 60s and the 70s with the sex revolution and the hippie movement and all that stuff.
Right.
But not, and then of course this might sound controversial, but I liked, like, the way women dressed in the 50s. It was very modest, they looked beautiful, not
Mhm.
that much makeup, like the dresses and the skirts and the shoes, that's like that's attractive to me. And not
Mhm.
saying like, especially the dresses nowadays and fashion nowadays. There's people that wear dresses. I'm like, wow, they look amazing. But me personally, that's the thing that, like I said, the guys need to like differentiate. Are you actually thinking they're beautiful, or is that your stupid monkey brain thinking they're beautiful?
Right.
Like you have
Yeah.
to, yeah, you have to differentiate what are you actually thinking about? Like which brain are you
Right.
using? And
Right.
unfortunately, the way that both men and women are warped, obviously I'm talking about from a guy's perspective, we're taught that it's okay to let monkey brain essentially take over and just like perceive everything. It's like there's this
Mhm.
movie called Shallow Hal. It's with Jack Black. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Mhm.
And it's basically this guy in Shallow Hal, played by Jack Black's character. He only wants to date beautiful, like gorgeous looking women.
Mhm.
And he meets the famous speaker Tony Robbins. Have you ever heard about Tony Robbins?
Yeah.
Yeah, he meets Tony Robbins in an elevator and they get stuck. And so Tony Robbins like explains to him like, "Okay, tell me about yourself." And Jack Black was telling him, "Yeah, I broke up with this girlfriend, my girl, and yeah, it was kind of suck." He's like, "Okay, it sounds to me like you're more focused on the outside of a woman rather than on the inside." He's like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
well," but looks at the thing. He's like, "Okay, let me ask you this question. Would you rather would you rather date a girl that has one nipple or half a brain? And he's like, ooh, toughie.
Oh
And
my
Tony
gosh.
Robbins is like, seriously? So here's what Tony Robbins does. He hypnotizes Jack Black. He like hypnotizes him. So basically what happens is he sees these beautiful girls, but then his best friend sees them and they're like not attractive looking at all. And he's telling him, "Yeah, these girls are absolutely gorgeous." And he's like, "What? Like, no. Like,
Oh
what are you
my
talking about?"
gosh.
But and so his buddy goes to him like, "What did you do to him? What did you do to my friend?" And he's like, "No, here's what I did. I dehypnotized him. He was focused on the outside. Now what he perceives as the outside is their inner beauty.
Uh,
So for example, Jack Black will see maybe like for example, the girl he starts dating is Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's beautiful Gwyneth Paltrow, but Gwyneth Paltrow actually is like a very big husky woman in real life, but because he's hypnotized, he sees her as regular like beautiful Gwyneth Paltrow,
uh-huh.
you know. And so but then if he sees like let's say a regular beautiful girl, but she's got a horrible personality, he'll see them as ugly.
Right.
So like it's one of those things. It's like people need like honestly, guys should watch this movie. And the cool thing about the ending of the movie is that he ends up falling in love with Gwyneth Paltrow, even though like she's a big girl. But he's like, I fell in love with this woman that took care of burn victims at the children's hospital, that cares about people, and that has a dream of becoming like a doctor who travels the world to help like third world country children.
Yeah.
Like that's what I fell in love with, and I didn't realize it until it was like too late. And it's like one of those things that I think that guys, I wish it could happen, but guys need to sometimes be hypnotized to see beauty on the inside, like to truly understand like looks, like because I know this is a general thing, looks only last for so long, because at the end of
Yeah.
the day we all get old and we don't look how we were in our prime ages of 25 until 33 or 34 35 or however long your
68.
yeah, however long your a parental prime looks like.
You're
you
right.
know like for example, Jennifer Aniston like is still in her prime and she's like in her late 50s,
I
which
know.
is
It's like weird to me. When I see celebrities, I'm like, how old are they? Like, come on.
yeah, one of my celebrities that I'm like I have always had a crush on was Lucy Liu because of Charlie's Angels. And I didn't know Lucy Liu is in her 50s.
Dang.
I'm like that's insane.
Oh man.
Yeah. But
That's funny.
it's I agree. It's one of those things that nowadays, like I have little cousins there. Um, there's my cousin Desiree, and she has two younger sisters. One of them, honestly, she was starting to do makeup like in the eighth grade, and she looked
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm like you look like you're like 16, 17. And
Right.
she's like,
Yeah.
no, it's not great. I'm like,
No.
uh, of course now that I think she's a junior or a senior. I think she's a junior. Now she looks like she's like a sophomore or junior in college.
Yeah.
It's like, girl, man, you're like upping your game.
No, it's true. And like I think like I love like the days where I wear less makeup. And I'll like go somewhere with my boyfriend and I'll get carded and he's like, "Do you know how old she is?"
Oh, honestly, that's the
Because
best
I'm
feeling in the
30, I'm
world.
31. So he always laughs when I get carded because he's like, "You're just gonna be young forever, and I'm gonna be old. Like people are always gonna card me." So like we went to like the store like I don't know, last month, and I was getting alcohol, and so I get carded, and I was like, "Oh, and he's like, she's like 31, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it." And then after I check out, he checks out, and she's like, doesn't ask to card him, and he was like, "Are you kidding me?
No,
What the heck?"
I understand his pain. I finally got carded last night. It was the first time I was carded in since I think my October of last year.
Oh
It's
my
the
God,
last
how
time I got
old are
carded.
you? I can't remember.
I'm
You were talking about
23.
drinking, and I was like, are you even legal?
Yeah, I'm 23. Yeah, I was
No,
legal 2 years ago.
you're barely legal.
Yeah, I'm barely legal. I'm barely legal.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, some people they didn't card me. Even I would apologize, but I would underage drink, never get carded. Never get
That's
carded.
amazing. You would never like it. Was it like a place that was known for that, or you just wouldn't get
No, I
carded?
just I just
I feel
wouldn't
like
get
beard
carded.
though,
The
for
beard,
sure.
yes, but
Yeah.
even when I shaved my beard, like there was sometimes I just shave it just because I accidentally like made it uneven and I'm like, oh, I ruined it. I ruined trimming it, so then I have to shave it. And no, it would not get carded.
Dang.
They're like,
That's
what
so
would you have to
funny.
drink, sir? I was like, yeah, let me get a shot and a beer, please. There's my shot. There's my beer. That was easy. Yeah, but okay.
Oh.
So here's a question. Keeping on going on this topic. Obviously, would you say that because of the pressures of having to look beautiful, how do women deal with that? Like, I guess that pressure or anxiety? Because I know guys, obviously guys, we do different things with our image, but we're more, how should I say, we're very subtle, but subtle in speaking about it.
Hmm.
But we like for example, the big thing, obviously for a lot of guys, it's lifting, getting big, whether
Yes.
that's actually lifting and being healthy, or just
Right.
cheating or just cheating and just taking shortcuts and taking steroids, or
Right.
getting a haircut, buying cut off shirts. No, I'm not cut offs, but buying basically like tight shirts, tight pants,
Like muscle
nice
shirts and
shoes.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, sometimes, don't get me wrong, like sometimes I do like to dress like that. I like to comb my hair, go get a haircut, get my
Hmm.
beard trimmed, dress nice, and go out and I feel good. But there's sometimes, you know what, man, I just want to go in a tank top and some shorts and
Hmm.
flip-flops, and I feel good either way. But I mean, I understood in high school, that, in order to feel good, you had to look good, and everyone was dressing. There were some dudes just dressing like in $500 shirts, where I'm like,
My gosh.
bruh, like, do you even work, or is that just mommy and daddy money?
Oh man.
But I mean, I don't know how do a sense women deal with that anxiety and that pressure, because honestly, for a dude, it's stressing to about like, oh, I need to get as big as, or I need to do the things that so and so are doing, and this goes to my theme of kids no longer have heroes, they more have role models who I need to be exactly like.
Mm-hmm.
And how is it for like women, because obviously you have a woman's perspective.
Yeah, I think I was definitely that girl who struggled a lot with like body image and like feeling and looking, like I always disassociated myself with beauty. Like I never really felt beautiful. And I was bullied. A lot of my insecurities came from those early bullied years. So like that weird transition period that every single human since the dawn of time has gone through,
Yeah,
except
of
maybe
course.
Mary. Like where you're just like awkward because you're like growing into your features and like all that stuff. And so I was in that natural phase, and I'd always been a little bit chubbier than the other girls, and that was always the key. Like Lauren's too fat, she's ugly, her nose is too, like all these little things. Like my lips, I got made fun of for years about my lips being too big. Yeah.
How dare they?
I wasn't, it literally wasn't until I was in the cosmetic industry that I was like, oh, wait, like people don't have big lips. Like, this is actually good. I don't have to like overline like these like crazy people. Um, so it was funny that like a lot of things that I was bullied for, I later came to not maybe appreciate fully, like, but definitely see in a different light. So like now, if I do makeup, like it's for me. Like I want to look nice for me. Like there's not this pressure of like, oh, I have to wear a certain kind of makeup or do a certain level of makeup to be accepted. Like I do feel a pressure to like dress professionally. I think it's harder to give people crap when they're dressed professionally.
Hmm.
So I try to dress in a presentable way, so that like I seem to fit the role, especially with like the colored hair that a lot of times will make people feel like I'm underqualified for like speaking events and stuff like that. And it's amazing because like I'll wear suits to speaking events, and like the minute I walk in, like everyone's like, oh, like
Her,
I'm like, it's
it's like
funny because like
it's like that progressive commercial. It's like we all see it, we all see
yeah,
it. We all see, God, she
yeah.
has blue hair.
I cannot
Oh,
tell you how many people have like whispered that to me, like, we all see it, we all, and I'm like, yes, I know, like, commercial was written for me, you're welcome. Which I love, like, and I'm not even insecure about it now. Like, I have a couple tattoos, like, people used to make fun of the tattoos or the piercings or whatever it is. Like, I think it just comes from like being secure with yourself. And I think a lot of the girls who deal with it in the ways that I did, where we get like severely depressed, we get very like filled with anxiety because you can't change your features unless you get plastic surgery, which 12-year-olds getting plastic surgery like that I'm pretty
yeah,
sure is illegal. So there's different ways to deal with it, and unfortunately I was thrust into this environment where this beauty expectation was I think mildly innocent, but still just being piled on top of piled on top of piled on top of after years became almost a distorted view of how I saw myself. And it wasn't until I would say even like maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I fully embraced like, oh, I am like naturally beautiful, and like not because I have great structuring or whatever, like just because like God made me, and that alone qualifies me as beautiful. And then really believing that, not just like having those words come out. So I think girls deal with it differently, unfortunately, with the levels of anxiety that have changed over in the past several years. Like anxiety is up, depression's up, more than any other generation. And surprisingly, premarital sex is down, not because they don't want to have sex, but because they don't see the need because of pornography and masturbation and like all these other ways to gratify their needs. So it's amazing to see like the cultural trends. And I think because of that, there's this feminist movement of I don't have to be beautiful for anyone. Um, which I think, I don't know that that's healthy or not. Like I haven't investigated that enough to really see one way or the other. Oh my gosh,
more than 200,000 teens that had plastic surgery last year, and social media had a lot to do with it.
that makes me nauseous for real.
Yeah, oh my God. Teens are also showing an increased interest in Botox and other injectables.
Yeah.
Doctors attribute it to young people scrolling through their Instagram or Facebook feeds of celebrities with augmented cheeks and lips. And also, not just that, um, I actually am following like a woman who actually used to be in the porn industry,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, she was in it for like years. And basically, she said, oh, I think almost like 80% of females literally get work done, whether
Yeah.
it's their lips or their breasts or their booty or whatever. It's like a lot of them have do that because it's like you said, guys have this warped reality. No, not guys. Well, guys, but boys have this warped reality of what real beauty is in a woman. And like, oh, a woman's not beautiful if she don't have a big thing here, a big thing there, or she's not blonde or with this type of jawline or skin or whatever. And
Hmm.
oh my God, some 229,000 cosmetic procedures were performed on patients aged
Oh my
13 to
gosh.
19 in 2017.
I just see that as a form of abuse, like of child neglect. Like what I don't know. I don't like to judge people, but like that's just so intense to literally change your face at such a young age before you have time to really develop emotionally and mentally to have that is crazy to me. And like as you were saying that, I like immediately thought of the Kardashians because I'm like, like you're saying, like
Ugh.
we don't have heroes anymore. We don't want to do hard things. We don't want to be heroic. We don't want to grow. We just want it right now. And that's what plastic
Exactly.
surgery is. And like I said, I don't want to judge anybody because I do think there's a lot of merit and like I don't know everybody's story. Like even famous
Yeah.
people, like I don't know their stories. I don't know why they made the choices that they
Yeah.
did, but it's sad to me because it's like not that you should have to deal with who you are, but like God designed you with such care. Like, why would he mess up? Like, he wouldn't. So, like, yeah, maybe it's not your standard of beauty that you look like, but I think feeling beautiful has nothing to do with honestly your face or your body shape or anything like that. Like,
No,
I think
no, I
feeling
I agree. Like you can have the most perfect a woman can have the most perfect figure in the world naturally, but I guarantee you that still isn't going to be enough because someone's always
Mhm.
going to tell you it's not good enough. And I
Right,
think people and people in general need to differentiate and figure out for themselves that they're just people that are just gonna always try to bring you down or try to compare you to something else, something that you can never have. Like one of the things that with guys that I see, because I'm really into like getting into health and like lifting and stuff, just because it's one I was getting fat, I was, and in quarantine that's when I started to like get fit and I lost a
yeah,
lot of my body fat, you know. But a problem I see nowadays is when guys just see like a picture of some dude that's like jacked, but like a good big, and they work out for like 3 months, and you know they're getting there, and there's results, you can see them. But the
right.
problem is they're like, no, it's not good enough because I'm not as big as. I'm like, okay, bro, you need to understand you are physically and genetically not going to be able to get as built as him. Why? Because your body's not built to get big like that. If you want to get built like
Right.
that, then obviously go do steroids. Go do steroids and f up your body. Kill your body by doing that. Like honestly, that's honestly what some guys are.
Dang.
They compare. And the same I see also with women. They see people like I don't know, Scarlett Johansson or Instagram models, and they're like, oh, or for example, the Kardashians. Like, I don't know
Mm.
if you noticed, but have you seen like Khloe Kardashian? I
I
see her in this
know.
like migraine commercial, like, oh, take this pill for
Yeah,
migraine, and I'm like, I had to literally like look and pause for a second. I'm like, is that Khloe? I'm like,
yeah,
I don't doesn't look like it looks like her, but I'm not sure if it. And sure enough, it's like, they don't even look like her.
yeah.
It's like it's insane to me how like makeup and surgery can like literally just like how it does that to people. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't even know that was even her. And she's like
Hmm.
obviously part of one of the most famous families in not just in America, in the world. And the fact that I had to literally like look really hard to pay attention to be like, is that Khloe Kardashian?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just nuts. But no, like that instant just I want it now, I want this look now is a problem that comes from people who look at role models and just role model after whether it's a celebrity, whether it's of someone you follow on social media or just it could be whoever. But my problem is with people, it's like, oh, you need to pick your role models. A role model can't be someone you see on TV because you don't know them. You don't know their
Hmm.
issues. You don't know their problems. You don't know their struggles. You don't know some of the stuff they do and why they do that. Hell, yeah, they could probably like, act in a great movie, but in real life they might be the biggest piece of scum in the world, not have a care for people,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. It's hard. And I think like a lot of, I don't know if you've ever heard of the documentary Irreplaceable. It's I think one of
No.
like to this day one of my favorite documentaries. But you touched on it a little bit earlier when you were talking about like the sexual revolution and um it basically goes piece by piece of like the demise of the modern family and like where did it start and what is it about? And it pinpoints like the sexual revolution is what changed the structuring of families because all of a sudden women were empowered to have birth control and abortions and it was normalized and that led to men being unfaithful to their wives because there weren't consequences and if there was a consequence to sex of like we oh shoot we got pregnant they could abort the baby but then they took it a step further and like obviously not everyone praise the lord had abortions but then you
Hmm.
started so then we saw men that had two families or three families and didn't have to be accountable to these other women that they had babies with. And like, so it goes step by step. Yeah. Um, it goes step by step through it all. And it's just incredible. If you have a chance, it's like, I think it's like an hour and a half, like it said in one of those clips
Yeah.
but it's a really fascinating. They go through like psychology and different historical trends and really do such a good job with it.
Yeah.
But
Trying to mute it. There we go. Well, let me play the trailer. That's fine. Whatever. But yeah, no, I'll give it a watch.
yeah, but
That
it's amazing to think about too, because it's like that's where when I think of like people and they come, to me and they share their story after like a speaking event or ministry event or whatever, I'm always amazed at like how vulnerable they are with me and how they're, in therapy or they're years in therapy. Like some people, like I've met a woman who was like 20 years in therapy. Not that that's bad. Like I think therapy is good, and if you need 20 years of therapy, you need 20 years of therapy. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like I'm not judging
No,
that. Like I
yeah.
think that's great.
No, yeah.
But it's phenomenal because all of that woundedness happens in our impressionable years, and if we don't heal that, we bring all that into our relationships, and so of course we have traumatic divorce rates and like traumatic relationships with our spouses and with our children because we're broken people trying to make things that aren't broken, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. It's a crazy time to be in ministry. But it like because like our world has never been so messed up as it is now. Like you
Oh
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
No,
our world has
definitely.
never been so wounded, so in need of a I mean, yes, we actually have had more times where we needed a savior.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're just in our modern times, like our grandparents never saw times like this. Our great
No.
grandparents never saw times like this. Like kids are getting, there's kids that are sexually active in sixth grade, and that's just, the
Yeah.
average age. Like they're, it could be younger for some kids. Like pornography, the first time a young boy can see porn is as young as 5 years old. Like
Yeah.
honestly, they can see it whenever, but like the impressionable years and the impact and the ramifications of that are just crazy. Like we've never seen so many people dehumanized and desensitized the way that we have in today's culture. It's
Yeah. Well, to
phenomenal.
also play devil's advocate to that also, I think to a point of also why our grandparents or our great grandparents weren't able to like have that like, didn't see that is because they were dealing with a lot of stuff also, like for example the depression,
Hmm.
the great the first world war, world war obviously World War II and all the stuff that happened, and of course the fall of the old Russia, and then the birth of the Soviet Union and the war on communism, the Vietnam War, and how obviously the sex revolution, and obviously the civil rights movement, um, and all that stuff going on, in segregation and Jim Crow. So it's not saying like, they didn't deal with the stuff we're dealing today, but they dealt with a lot of stuff back then where they could probably like, yeah, it was hell on earth.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's
and
like to play
it's
devil's
a
advocate with
different,
that.
yeah, it's different levels for sure. But I think the emotional woundedness that we're seeing the ramifications of, I think is vastly different. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
there's not like, and I think there has always been things like sex trafficking has always, in my opinion, been around in various forms.
Hmm.
But like the normalcy of it is what surprises me, and like the normalcy of like you can, be in sixth grade and start sexually, exploring with other people, and that's okay because you're just trying it out. Like the things that are normalized, I think would scandalize our grandparents. Like
Oh
with,
yeah.
and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Because like I totally agree with you. Like sending a kid, kids lying at 12 years old to get into the war and fight, go off and die. Like that's drastically different. And
Yeah.
I think that was a level of maturity that we haven't seen in our lifetime, like at
Yeah.
least I haven't, unless it was through the eyes of our grandparents and their stories.
Hmm.
Because kids just aren't mature. Like they're not required to be. Like, like kids throw fits about unloading the dishwasher at 16 years old. Like, what? Like that's your, like you're a domestic terrorist for having to, be forced to do chores.
No,
Like your parents are,
no, not the dishes.
the filth, it's crazy though. Like the amount of, um, like I was teasing my oldest nephew on Sunday, calling him a little snowflake because I was like, do you need a safe space? Because it's funny to me. Like it's funny to me that we are so overly sensitive of everything. Like poor kid's 17 years old, and I'm making
Oh,
fun of him, but yeah,
you
I
need
know.
a safe space. Do you? do we need to talk? Do we need to use your words? Do we need to
I'm gonna
talk about
send
your
this to him.
feelings?
He's gonna hate me. No, I'm kidding. No, but I don't even remember what we were teasing him about. But I was like, it's just like the things that we're so aware of, and like the cancel culture, like everything that we're like raising these kids with. Like we're not raising them to be heroic and have grit and determination and to live these incredible lives. Like we're raising them to be entitled, to be spoiled, to be a culture that, oh, everything is on demand, so I should just have it, you know?
Exactly, and that goes back to like I said, heroes and role models. Like role models are more of like, oh, they did it, so I want it now, and I want it exactly that way.
Right.
Whereas a hero, like for example, when I was a kid, my heroes were Batman and Babe Ruth. Those were my heroes. And the reason why, and I've said this over and over, but the reason why I say Batman and Babe Ruth, Batman doesn't have any superpowers.
Hmm.
Batman is a normal guy that, yes, he's rich and has billions of dollars, but just because you're rich and have billions of dollars doesn't mean, like everything in the world is like handed to you. He had to like work and learn all this stuff. And plus, the world was against him when literally he has no family. So I was
Right.
already like, man, if Batman could like have the biggest obstacle ever and lose his family and still be a hero for a city that's literally torched in crime, then I
Hmm.
could do that. And like with Babe Ruth, it was like, man, Babe Ruth was an orphan that grew up in Baltimore. He had nothing going for him. If Babe Ruth can be an orphan and go through all that stuff and be the most famous baseball player ever, well then I can do that. And
Hmm.
that's the difference between a hero and a role model. And
Hmm.
kids don't have heroes no more. We don't have those people that like, hey, they struggled, they did it, so can I. And my
Right.
life is so much easier than theirs. But like you said, people aren't willing to put in the work and to focus and dedicate themselves to be something better and to do something better for not just themselves, but for other people.
Right.
But one last topic before I let you, before we end off, and this is a topic of a controversial topic, but abortion, because
Hmm.
abortion now is very prevalent nowadays, and it's obviously it's around the country and around the world. What is honestly just your like opinion and about abortion and what like why it's wrong and what I guess in a way if you were in charge, what should be done about it?
Hmm. So I don't know if you remember this about my story, but my mom was told to abort me because I was supposed to have spinal bifida and be Down syndrome.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
I think I'm always like hypersensitive about it because of that. And I
Mhm.
just look and I'm like, dang, like I wonder how many other doctors got it wrong, especially with limited technology or, like for whatever reasons that they were
Yeah, cause
recommending it. Like
yeah, cause
how
you're
many
you're a
children?
90s baby, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
so they don't have the stuff that they do now.
right.
So
And
you
so
were
and, and
so
then
they
they thought,
basically were like you were born with the spinal bifida, and
yeah.
they're like, there's no point, she's not gonna live. It's like,
Yeah, so and it wasn't even that then it was because they you could still have a viable life, but they said the quality of life. And that's I think the big thing with the medical community in general is they use these words to disqualify and dehumanize the human person. Like and they're very specific and strategic with how they use these words to promote this ideology that my body, my choice. Like to promote that it's okay to kill another human if it's the primary humans, if we're just hosting that other human, like then it becomes our choice who we want to host and who we don't want to host, which I think is just, I look at, I'll do retreats and events for teenagers. And in the past 2 years, it's been amazing to see the amount of females in the Catholic Church that believe it's okay for abortion. And it's not
really?
because they're educated in the topic, it's because they're preached from the culture what abortion is. And they believe that it's a feminist, right to have the ability to choose if you want to have an abortion or not. And it's about a right, it's not about a person. And I think the minute we dehumanize something, anything, we risk having that misinterpretation of the dignity and the value of human life. And so I, obviously, as a practicing Catholic, do not believe that abortion is okay. I know the church teachings stipulates, there's grave circumstances where it is okay. And even then, I think about, my personal life and my boyfriend and like the path that we're on of like getting married. And I think as hard as it would be, I can't imagine. And again, I might feel differently when I'm there, but I can't imagine saying my life is more valuable than this innocent child. Like I have a really hard time, um, being pro-life in one area and then accepting that it's okay as long as. And so I know the church stipulates that for medical reasons for the mother and whatnot. But you look at the saints, and every single saint that is in heaven that's, recognized by the church and not, was pro-life. Why? Because they had the dignity of the human person at the forefront of their mind. They wouldn't have made it to heaven if they didn't, right? Because every saint is self. Like, so I look at what the church has taught. I look at how people have radically lived their life for God, those that have made it to heaven, those that have inspired me in my own personal life. And even my mom, like the last 3 children she had out of the 6 of us, she was told not to have any more kids after her 3rd child. And I think of like my sister Kristen and my brother Trevor. Like, I can't imagine a life where they don't exist, and I don't get to be a part of their life. And I was blessed to be at my sister Kristen have, the last 3 births for her children. She has 5 children. And it's incredible. Like, it's this life-changing experience to see a baby born, and to be a part of that process of pain and joy within moments, And I think of that moment and I'm like, I wish that so ardently that women and people in general could be a part of that process, because if you saw that process of like a life coming into this world and that first cry, like I can't imagine somebody saying that, that your life is more important, or your quality of how you want to live your life is more important than that child, whether you keep the child or not. Like, I also have nieces and nephews who are adopted, and I'm a strong advocate. Like, adoption is totally necessary. I don't think everybody that has a child should be a parent. I don't think that gives you a right to parent. I think there's a lot of people that, make mistakes and get pregnant young. Not that pregnancy is a mistake, but like, there is a time to be pregnant and to build a family. And for some people, they do make a mistake and, have sex way too early in life, and, would not be a good, suitable parent for that child. But then I look at people who are infertile, or who get married later in life and can't have children, and think like, what a gift that child would be to their life. What a blessing. Because the adoption process, and I know this is like side tangenting, but I have such beef with the adoption agencies and processes in the United States. We have the worst system set in place for post-adoption services, for adopting families, for foster care families. Like, how many children have to go through systems? And this is not generalizing. This is like out of the, hundreds of students that I've met across the nation, like those that have adopted risk higher rates for everything, like depression, anxiety, suicide, like jail time. Like, there's a plethora of problems that come with it. And instead of supporting families that adopt, we just leave them high and dry. And we're like, okay, see ya. Like, how are we supporting them? Like, so I know, and somebody could argue like, well, that's why you should just abort the baby, because then you don't have that, child brought into that. But at the same time, like, all of us have gone through shit, like all of us have gone through stuff in our life. Like, and does that make my life not worth living? And so I think it's a much deeper issue than just, should we have abortion? Should we not have abortion? I think the fundamental human value of a woman and her dignity, of her, her risks of depression and suicide and self-harm go drastically up the moment she decides to have an abortion, because the ramifications of what our bodies go through as women through the birthing process, is so traumatic when the life is ripped out of you, that they skyrocket for depression and anxiety and after self-harm. So I think, like, just from a human advocacy standpoint, like, it's unhealthy for women to have abortions. And I know people are, I don't know who your friend groups are who might see this, but they might slam me and say like, she's wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. Like, if you look at any traumatic experience and say there's no negative ramifications of that negative experience happening, I think that's just blatantly ignorant. Like, you have to understand anytime you make a massive life change that negative ramifications are going to proceed. Like, it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, and the woundedness that you can never get back. Like, once you end that life, it's not like flipping a switch and, oh, I can have that life brought back. It's over. Like,
Yeah.
game over. There's no bringing it back. There's no like, oh, the next one I'll have. Every life is incredibly unique, and you can't duplicate that the next time you're ready to have a kid.
Hmm.
So I think there's a lot that the country does wrong. I think that there's a lot that we do right. I think one of the things we do right as a country is passing the heartbeat bill, which some states have successfully passed. And it's the moment that they can detect a heartbeat, the mother is no longer able to have an abortion performed for her.
Okay. That's a really
I think
positive
a
thing.
lot of states that can adopt that bill, I think that's a great way of supporting the pro-life movement in a way that makes sense. Like, why would we not call it killing if you can hear a heartbeat? Like, if you can detect viable human life, why is it not considered murder? And I think that's always been a struggle for me. The states that I have huge issues with are the states that still allow up until 9 months. And I know with our new president in office, like, there's a huge history of support in both of the candidates, the president and the vice president, and in their histories alone, there are thousands upon thousands of abortions that have been attributed to bills that they have passed, to agendas that they have put forward in places of people of power to rally behind and support this mission and this ideology that women have the right to choose who should live and who should die. And ultimately, I think that's what abortion is I am in power and I get to choose who lives and who dies based on what I want to do with my body, recklessly or otherwise. So that's, I think, like, my very conservative, very candid view of it. I think the biggest thing that people bring up is, what about abortions that are done via rape? Like, they, are raped, and
Yeah.
then there's such
That's
a
the
low
biggest
percentage
argument.
there's such a low percentage of women that get abortions because they're raped. And we, as the pro-life movement, don't understand that enough and don't do our own research to advocate that that's not always the case. It's hardly ever actually the case. But also in abortion clinics, especially with Planned Parenthood, you have agencies that won't flag human trafficking. You've got 14-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls, even 18-year-old girls coming in, getting abortions, who are being trafficked. And there's so much evidence of this, and still they're not shut down. So I think there's um, a much larger agenda that the world leaders, the people that run our countries, run our governments, run our, all of these agencies, like, they don't care about us, like,
No, of
to think
course
that,
not.
President Biden cares about me as a person, I
No.
honestly don't believe he does. I think he cares about votes. I think he cares about getting things and policies approved and writing off bills. But I don't think for a minute that he has one, me or my family and our health and our well-being in the forefront of his mind. Like, and I think to think that any campaign person, would, is kind of ridiculous. And so anyway, as long as I would love to talk about this, I think, but mainly is like, I see it as a human dignity issue. I see this is like
Hmm.
bullying is a human dignity issue. And ultimately, as a Catholic, as a practicing Catholic, who, I'm striving to get to heaven, I'm trying to get there.
Yeah.
Like, I want to live my best life. And if I look at Jesus and I, look at the scriptures and I'm actively reading, I don't see anywhere where Jesus is, oh, you're pregnant, you should kill it. You should get an abortion. This time isn't right for you. And I know we don't, I'm kind of saying that facetiously, but like, in reality, like, the more we read scripture, the more we realize, like, the world was messed up long before we arrived on the scene,
Hmm.
and it's going to continue to be messed up, but that doesn't mean we should allow it to stay messed up. And I think that's our call as Catholics, as Christians, as brothers and sisters aiming for a better world, whether you're, religious affiliated or not. Like, our job is to make the world better than when we got here. And if we're not doing that actively, then what's the point of any of it?
Hmm. No, I agree with that. No, everything that you said, I agree with. And first off, I mean, um, the reason why I didn't want to vote for President Biden, I mean, obviously it wasn't just because Joe Biden. It was honestly mostly because of Kamala Harris. Well,
Yeah.
reason because just because she claims to be like for women and for power of women, but I don't know if you know this, but the reason why I was just very uh very against her was she was, well, first off, she put a very large number of African Americans in behind bars just for
Yes.
literally carrying bud, for
Yep.
carrying bud in a state where it's legal.
Yeah.
In a state where it's legal. That was number one. And and obviously the number two reason, and I read this. Well, first someone was talking about it in a podcast, and then I read it somewhere. But she was trying to propose a bill to lock up single mothers who could not get their child to school because their child was truancy.
Mm,
Like she was trying to propose something where to lock up single mothers who couldn't get their kids to school.
mm,
Like what? Like, what do you
yeah.
mean? If you're for women and you're for the power of women, then why are you trying to lock up women who struggle as a single mother, where maybe working two, three jobs, trying to have a roof under their heads for their kids, and unfortunately, yeah, sometimes maybe there's a school bus not there. They don't have time to go to school, or they just aren't able to, or no one's there to help. And you're trying to say like, oh, they're criminals, throw them in jail?
Hmm.
Like that's a no-no. That's a
Yeah.
big no. But that's the
I
one
haven't
reason why.
I haven't heard of that. And so I can't speak to that obviously, but even just from like a girl perspective, female perspective of like if there's a single mom and her kid's not going to school for one reason or the other, whether the mom's not taking her or the kid is just, in that phase of rebellion, like then the state needs to do something to help that kid. Like and the
Yeah,
mom,
I
it's not
agree.
throw them in jail because they're not doing an adequate job, with the kid. Like I honestly believe I am blessed to work with a group that it's like a detention center, but it's an in-home detention center, so it's like a whole campus, which has been really cool to work with. But like a lot of the kids that are there, made terrible choices time and time and time again. And so finally the state stepped in and said, you have to go, you're being sent to this place to rehab and to learn, how to respect authority, how to, it's essentially a live-in boot camp, I guess, is what it would be. But it's crazy. And like when we go, youth ministry, we go and pray with the boys and like bring things for them, like basic things like what is it called, like Axe body wash, like because the
Hmm.
state provides only the very basic, and basics doesn't sound, smell very good. So it's
Yeah.
like their favorite when they get back, body wash and stuff. But it's funny to think that like like we bring them blankets and things that they wouldn't like get to choose from, and they get to choose from us. And I think of programs like that, and I'm like, I wish we didn't, first of all, live in a world where we needed things like that, but second of all, I just
Yeah.
so desperately wish that we supported agencies that tried, because ultimately the goal is to get the kid in a place where they can go back and live in their home and be a responsible human,
Hmm.
and coexist with their family until they're able to move out on their own or whatever they're going to do with their life. So I don't know that we do a great job in general on getting people to where they need to be emotionally, physically, mentally. I think we, just like we said earlier, like everything's fast. I just want to be over with. I just want to do it. Like, let's get it
Yeah.
done. Like
Yeah. Get in, get out kind of
not
thing. Yeah.
authentic. It's not real. It's not, I genuinely care about you. It's going to take how long it takes.
No, it's
This is the
just
time I have for you.
it just sounds like, especially the American nowadays, it's about numbers, how many numbers you got, and if that number is gone, then well, that number can always be replaced, and
Hmm.
it's a sad reality to look at, and this, I guess, this kind of in a way kind of, well, it doesn't go in a way, but here's okay. So I heard your thing on abortion. I agree 100%. And obviously, here's my take on abortion. Obviously, yes, I agree. It's wrong. You're denying life, and and obviously, you're not allowing that child to have the choice of whether to live and see what that child can become. But here's my thing with it, and this is why for me it's a very hard topic and a very hard thing to talk about. Is first off, I agree. I think in my heart, and I could possibly be wrong, but just to me and the people I've met, I don't think no woman in their right mind really truly wants to have an abortion.
Mm.
Like I think that, and so, I might be wrong, but just to me, that's how I feel. And also, I think if we ever do meet someone that is considering to have an abortion, I think we shouldn't, like, for example, I'm very against people not to saying like the people who just pray outside abortion clinics, but I'm against people who have pictures signed up of literally like of detailed like slaughtered like
Dismemberment.
babies, yeah,
Yeah.
dismemberment and all that, and calling those poor pregnant women saying you're a murderer, you're gonna kill your child. I think
Yeah.
that's the very just wrong way because first off, they're in a fragile state of mind. They don't
Mhm.
know what to do. Maybe like we don't know the situation of why they're there. It could be because of human trafficking. It maybe could be because, they were raped, or it could be because they were just maybe had a fling with their boyfriend and their boyfriend's like, "Oh, well, I don't want it." And it's like, "Well, they don't know what to do." And a lot of them
Right.
because they're teenagers.
Right.
They don't know better. And I think the way that we should talk to them, and really like we should I guess approach them is to be like, look, well, to me it's hard because at the end of the day sometimes I can't force people what to do.
Right.
I can't force anyone to do anything, and I go in that with that acknowledgement because I know if I were to force someone from not doing that, then it just feels wrong in general, and I think that's it's not a bad thing because who's to say if I stop them then they're not going to go back tomorrow.
Right.
So, but I think we should tell them like, look, this is why. Is like you can give them statistics like, look, you're gonna not only are you gonna feel really bad like once your child is gone, but there's a lot of things where it ruins your body. It does some really really bad things to your body. Especially, I don't know. I kind of did research on this when they give you that pill you take, and it's
The
like, oh, don't
morning
worry.
after
Yeah,
pill.
the morning
Yeah.
after. It's like, don't worry, you're gonna and all that. And it's actually done some really horrible. It does some horrible things to a woman's body and their biology and just
Yeah.
everything about the reproductive system. But I think you have to let them know that like, hey, like no matter what happens, you know, you're still loved,
Mhm.
and know that like just I think they should know like they should be cared for. Like
Right.
let
Yeah.
them like because they're fragile. They're in
Yeah.
a place where they don't know what to do and they don't know where to turn. It's like, oh, I can't take care of it, and of course I cannot stand the argument when people make me when I tell them this. It's like, oh, why can't they just adopt or put in foster care? I'm like, okay, here's the flawed process with that thinking. By a family who abuses them. Who's to say they go into a foster care that maybe the families don't have the the equipment or like the means to really take care of the child and take care of them the way they need to be taken care of. We
Hmm.
can't just put them in a category and ship them off and expect, oh, everything's going to be a-okay. It's like,
Right.
no, you gotta put yourself in other people's shoes is what is my argument for sometimes just understanding where they're coming from.
Right.
You have to put yourself in their shoes and try to really be like, look, like I understand what you're going through and I understand. I don't not to say I do understand, but I get it. I get it. Like this is a way out.
Hmm.
But you know what? Like can we just talk? Like let me talk. Or if me and you were outside an abortion clinic and someone was like walking by and we're like, "Hey, can we just talk to you? Can we just talk to you?" Like and I wouldn't even be like, "Why are you doing this?" I'd be like, "Tell me your story. Like let me
Hmm.
get to know you. What's your name?" It's
Hmm.
like, "Hey, can we talk to you? Like could we just talk to you for like a few minutes if you want?" And if not, then it's like, "Okay, well just to let you know, like, you know, I'm sorry. Whatever happened, I'm sorry."
Hmm.
That's to me that's the best you can do. But I think if you let them know, like, I'm not calling you a murderer. I'm not saying like, oh, it's wrong because this is like, look, it's like, tell me about yourself. And you know what? Hey, it's okay to be scared. It's
Yeah.
okay to be scared and not know what to do. And
For
that's
sure.
like kind of my belief on abortion is that like we should not blame and put the blame and put the finger to those women that have had it. Because I think a lot,
Right.
like,
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
9.9 times out of 10, a lot of them end up regretting it and wish they hadn't gone through it.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
know in ministry that I've done in the past, like I think I don't know how long I've been in ministry now. Since I was 18. So that's like a substantial time.
yeah,
I'm
that's
31 now.
13 years.
But in that time, I've had several women. Anyway, in that time, I've heard several people share with me personally, like outside of the speaking event, like they'll wait in line and talk to me and stuff, and share that they've had an abortion and that I'm the only other person that knows. And I'm like, like it's just crazy to me because like of what you're saying, like they need to be met with mercy and like God doesn't like hate you. And I think that's the first time it happened and somebody shared with me that they had had an abortion, I just was devastated for them. Like it wasn't this even judgment of like how could you? It was I was just so hurt for them because to carry a secret and I have my own past outside of, you know, like what you know, and everyone
Hmm.
has that where
Yeah, of
we have
course.
our own realities outside of what we let people know. And for me, like a huge part of my life is woundedness in areas that I've talked about and areas that is very hard for me to talk about. And um, so when women confide in me in sexual abuse or, you know, about their abortions, that my first thing is always like, I'm just sick for them because I so desperately wish that they were met with mercy from the people in their lives. Like you're saying,
Hmm.
like know that they're loved no matter what, that they're, you know, like go to reconciliation. Like that's why if they're Catholic, you know, like receive that healing sacrament so that you can begin the healing process because so much of anything in our lives is emotional and mental, you know, like the physical aspects of it are only part of it. That's why sex is a big deal. You know, like that's why you know, it's not just this, oh, well, it's because our bodies need it. No, there's an emotional impact that has on you. There's a physical impact. There's a psychological impact that has on you, and it continues over the years. Like it just doesn't lose itself. And so I think it's crazy to me. And I was one of those like radical Catholic kids that I've been protesting, you know, at abortion clinics since I was 7. And I've never, thank the Lord, had the experience that you're talking about where people are shouting like you're a murderer. And I think it's like I honestly have never seen it, and I'm sure that there are people that have done that, unfortunately, just because our culture is very broken and people don't know how to behave sometimes. But um, in the years that I've gone, you know, like once a month, once a week, however long, from 7 up until, you know, current day, I've never had that experience of someone yelling like you're a murderer. Thankfully, not the graphic pictures, like
Yeah, like
you know,
they
praying the
there
rosary
was.
peacefully and like it's a very peaceful environment of when we go, it's to, you know, pray that they have the change of heart, pray for miracles to happen, pray that, you know, these women change their minds and realize they don't have to do kind of like what you're saying, like they don't have to do it. They don't have to
Yeah.
be cornered to feel any certain way, you know, that they recognize the dignity of life.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like for example, when those people, like there was a group of people when I was in high school, like it was like 20 of them that showed up around our high school and were protesting, giving out pamphlets. And
Hmm.
this was when I was really starting to like get in my faith and really like, trying to get off of my bad habits and all that kind of stuff. And this dude just hands me a pamphlet like, "Hey, bro, you need to stop. We need to stop all this stuff." And I'm like, "Dude, I don't want to look at this, man." He's like, "Oh, are you pro-choice?" I'm like, "No, I'm pro-life, but this isn't okay. I don't want to
Hmm.
look at this. Like, this isn't. You want to scare people? Like
Yeah.
using a fear tactic to scare people. It's like that's not okay. Like I don't. I just see that almost as being dehumanizing as ultimately those
Hmm.
doctors that give abortions. Like,
Yeah.
it's dehumanizing to do that to people and but that's a whole other headache that happened. But no, I think I think people need honestly need more to be told of like, look, it's okay to be scared and it's okay, like know that there's someone out there that doesn't hate you for your decision, and
Right.
they need more people like you. They need more people to like be understanding and to be very caring, like, look, well, first off, thank you for sharing, and but
Hmm.
also like know that there are people here that care about you, and we're here to
Mhm.
work with you, not for you, or yeah, kind of for you, but we're here to work with you and to help you, and we care. Because I think now that word like we care is thrown out so much now,
Mhm.
and it's just like literally a sentence with that has no meaning to it because everyone
Right.
cares. Oh, we care, but actions inevitably speak louder than words.
Yep.
And first off, like what you're doing and speaking to women or going to your conferences and talking about being vulnerability, about beauty and about the meaning of life and the life of which Christ has given us and what God has blessed us with is something that I think people, whether they believe or not, I think the most important message for people, because I understand believers and non-believers because I was once a
Mhm.
non-believer, now I am a
Mhm.
believer. So I'm trying to like describe it in both ways. But I think just people need to know that like it's okay to be yourself. Don't feel
Mhm.
pressured to, be other things and try to be something that you can never be, which is okay. And
Mhm.
also to know that like no matter what decision you make, like there is somebody out there that's not going to hate you for your decisions. And
Right.
we definitely need more of that. So first off, I commend you for doing that because it's not easy. And obviously don't ever stop doing it. I expect you to keep doing this until the day you die, whether that's actually professionally or just literally talking with someone at a cafe or at a bus stop. I don't know.
Yeah. That
But
sounds more accurate. Like I'll never stop talking till the day I die.
yeah, exactly. But hey, Lauren, first off, thank you so much. I commend you for what you're doing, and this was so much fun, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yes, it was good.